I think one of the great qualities that are underplayed in the world is stubbornness. Stubbornness in the sense of I want to do something and uh, just trying to do it and working at it constantly. And and I don't, to be honest, I don't fully know how to answer your question. There are some aspects that I can tell you. I come from a family of writers. I have a twin sister who's a writer. I had my parents wanted to be writers. I had grandparents. I had a grandmother in particular who was a writer. I had great grandparents who were writers. So this was in the world that I existed. So it wasn't foreign to me in that way, correct? I also wanted to be a baseball player as a kid. I knew no baseball players. I was inept as I was as a writer. My father couldn't have cared less about sports, so he wasn't there to say, here, this is the way to catch a ball, etc., right? So there was no world to support me in that context. Not so in the world of writing. Now, let it be said, my parents were very much opposed to my becoming a writer, not because they thought writing was bad, but because they thought my writing was bad. But here was the key thing. There were adults in my world, actually friends of my family, who were writers. And for some reason, I have no idea why, they took an interest in me. Maybe I was the only young writer they knew, but they encouraged me. I'll tell you one of the great bits of advice that I ever received from a writer. I came home from college with this pile of stuff, and I gave it to this guy who was a writer friend of mine, an adult. And I said, his name was Lee. I said, Lee, would you read this stuff? I mean, when I think about it, what an imposition, giving this pile of crap. Anyway, he said, yeah, come back in a week. And so you can be sure I did. So I said, Lee, what do you think? And now Lee was from Arkansas. I think at one time he was a preacher. He had this wonderful baritone voice. I can't pretend to imitate it. He said, well, Avi, let me tell you, it takes a heap of manure to make a flower grow. And, you know, it sounds funny and it's a joke, but he's right. But at the same time, he was telling me I could grow it, right? So, and there were other writers, adults, who took this interest in me. And I won't pretend to know why. They must have seen something. Or maybe they just enjoyed my company. I have no idea. But that kind of encouragement from adults meant all the world to me. And since I didn't get any from my family, that made a huge difference in my life, writing life. Made me want to keep working. And, and when I began, I wanted to be a playwright, and I just lived in New York City, so I would go to plays all the time and read about the theater and talk about the theater and just worked at it. Did I write good plays? Maybe I wrote one or two. Maybe, I'm not sure. But it was another writer friend of mine when I was getting nowhere in my playwriting, he said, turn to novels. There's much better opportunity. So, this was this world I lived in which I was getting this encouragement and taken seriously when there was no reason to take me seriously, as far as I know. And it made all the difference in the world. So mentors who, they can criticize all they want, but they took me seriously. And that was huge, huge in my life.